Join me Wednesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern, where we'll give away over $300 in cash prizes in our annual NFL Trivia Jackpot game. Link to join below. And now, on with our feature presentation. The New England Patriots have been around for over 60 years, and have played a ton of games. In fact, they've played 1,022 games as of this video. That's a ton of plays that have been run. The average NFL game has 154 plays, so if we cut that number in half and assume 50-50 possession, that means that, each game, the Patriots ran 77 plays. Do the math, and over the course of their franchise's long and storied history, the Pats have run, give or take, over 78,000 offensive plays. So that got me to thinking, what's the dumbest play and the most boneheaded move that the Patriots have ever made during a game? What's the most insanely idiotic thing that a player has ever done to cost his team the game, deny them a critical chance in a critical spot, and blow their chances on the last play? Who are we kidding?
Stanford band nowhere in sight.
Uh-oh.
It's picked off.
Uh-oh. Oh, no.
Unbelievable.
Oh, wow.
Incredible.
Yeah, you knew it was coming. I mean, come on. I've watched a lot of football, and I can safely say that this is one of the dumbest plays I've ever seen any player make in the history of football. No recency bias, no exaggeration. This is right up there with Leon Lett at the end of Thanksgiving in 1993, and Garo Yepremian's botched play at Super Bowl VII for plays and absolutely atrocious bloopers that will live in infamy. Credit to Jakobi Meyers for owning up to it after the game and for facing the music, but 50 years from now, when people just discovering football for the first time learn and remember things about this season, they'll learn three things: who won the Super Bowl, the Vikings pulling off the largest comeback in NFL history, and this play. It's not a dumb decision, because that's reserved for coaches doing really stupid things. And unless Bill Belichick, maybe the greatest football mind of all time, explicitly told his team to do a lateral palooza in a tied game, then it wouldn't qualify. Plus, there's nothing that I can add on this play that hasn't been said already. It made no sense. It shouldn't have happened. It was a crazy ending, and it's one of the craziest and dumbest things that I've ever seen happen in a game. And I've seen a lot. So let's think about this from a different angle. What's the second worst and dumbest play in Patriots history, where a player did something absolutely moronic that single-handedly cost his team the game? Prior to whatever the heck Jakobi Meyers did, what held the crown? Well, for that, we have to talk about a different game that took place against an AFC West team that started at 4 o'clock Eastern, while the Patriots were hovering around the 500 mark, were coming off of a win against an NFC team the week before, and were coming off of a divisional loss against an AFC East team at home 2 games before. You might not have seen the play before, unless you're a Pats fan who remembers watching this game. For some reason, it's been lost in NFL history, even though it's one of the most brain-dead plays ever. But considering what the heck happened on Sunday, it deserves a deep dive today. Because before Jakobi Meyers came along, this is the story behind the dumbest play in the over 60-year history of the New England Patriots franchise. Before I talk about the play itself, as well as the reaction to said play, and the explanation and the justification for it, we need some context to understand how this game was going, and why this game was so important to the Patriots, making the ending to the game that much more painful. It's October 27th, 1991. It's week 9 of the NFL season, and we have an absolutely big game on our hands over at Foxborough Stadium between the New England Patriots and the Denver Broncos. This was a big game for both teams, but for the Patriots, this game was absolutely massive, and that's putting it lightly. After whatever happened in 1990, which was hands down the worst season by any team in NFL history in the post-merger era, considering how bad they were and everything that happened off the field, things were actually looking somewhat alright for the Pats in 1991 thus far. By no means was this a good team. Heck, their offense was still woefully inept, as they had only scored 92 points thus far, averaging right around 13 points per game, which was the second worst total in the AFC, only ahead of the Indianapolis Colts. And their point differential was not good either. They sat at -42, which was the third worst total in the conference, and tied for the fourth worst total in the NFL. However, despite all of that, after beating the Minnesota Vikings 26-23 in overtime the previous week, they found themselves at 3-4, right in the thick of things as we were hitting the halfway point of the season. Entering this day, the Pats only found themselves one game back of a wildcard spot. Considering other results from that day, most notably the 4-4 Seahawks winning to improve to 5-4 as the current number 6 seed, the Pats could not afford to lose this one. If they lost to the Broncos, then to say they'd have an uphill climb to make it to the playoffs would be a massive understatement. And who would be under center in this game against the Broncos? Who would be the quarterback squared up with the responsibility of going up against the legendary John Elway on the other side of the ball? Well, that would be this guy right here, Hugh Millen. This was Millen's first season with the Patriots after he had bounced around the league for quite a few teams before this, playing with the Rams in 1987 and playing for the Falcons in each of the previous 3 seasons from 1988 to 90. Now, Millen was brought in as a backup option. He was not the starter, nor was he ever expected to be the starter. Head coach Dick McPherson, who you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, was adamant that Tommy Hodgson was the team's starting quarterback, saying, "I don't think there would be a reason for us to pull him unless he goes completely wacko on us." Translation, unless Hodgson plays absolutely horribly, Millen is riding the bench. That lasted all of 3 games, as after a 20-0 shutout loss to the Cleveland Browns and a 20-6 loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers, Hodgson was benched for Millen. Now, as you can tell from these lowlights you've been watching the whole time, Millen was not exactly good. Far from it, in fact. In his 4 starts up until this point, he had 2 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, and had an absolutely abysmal sense of awareness, as he took 18 sacks. To give you an idea of how bad he was, over that stretch, from weeks 4 through 8, there were 20 quarterbacks to attempt at least 100 passes. Of those 20, Millen ranked second to last in touchdowns, fourth to last in interceptions, fifth to last in passer rating, second to last in interception percentage, and last in sacks taken and percentage of passing plays ending in a sack. In other words, his play at quarterback was ugly with a capital U, as he had taken at least 3 sacks in all 4 starts. If he wanted to redeem himself and keep New England's season and playoff hopes alive, he'd have to do it right here and now in this game. Yeah, so much for that. Because even though New England's defense was doing its job, the offense was struggling really badly. It's odd, because on the surface, the numbers don't look too terrible. The Pats never turned the ball over, they averaged 4.9 yards per carry, Millen only took 2 sacks, and he ended the day completing 68% of his passes. But for whatever reason, every drive just seemed to stall. And with 2 minutes left, following a 34-yard field goal by David Treadwell, the Broncos led it 9-6. The bad news was that the Patriots were trailing. The good news? They had the ball last. A touchdown wins it, and a field goal ties it. If you can go the length of the field and make some magic happen, all of a sudden, we've got a ball game again. And so far, it's looking good for Millen and the Patriots. Back-to-back completions lead to a first down to start the drive off, with Irving Fryer catching the pass that kept the chains moving. The Pats have 2 timeouts left at this point with about 1:15 left, so time isn't an issue, especially after Fryer makes yet another catch, with this one being near the sidelines and near midfield, allowing him to get the first down and stop the clock by going out of bounds. The Pats struggled heavily on 3rd down all day, going just 2 for 11. But if there was ever a time to get a conversion, this was the one. Because a few plays later, on 3rd down, Millen hit Michael Timpson over the middle to get the Pats into Denver territory and pick up a first down. 2 plays later, he goes over the middle again, hitting second-year man Greg McMurray to officially put the team in field goal range. And after one more completion to get a bit closer, with this one going to tight end Marv Cook, here's the situation. The Patriots have no timeouts left, and they have 14 seconds. they're at the 15-yard line. You have time for one, maybe two plays before you have to send the field goal unit out there and try to tie it up. Everything has to go to the end zone or to the sidelines. The one thing you cannot do here is run the ball and use the middle of the field. Do that, and the game is over. With that, we know the situation. We know the stakes. Worst case scenario, if you don't do anything stupid, you're lining up for the game-time field goal to take this thing into overtime. All right, Hugh Millen, this is your moment. Show me what you got.
They trail the Broncos 9-6. Hugh Millen in trouble, will scramble to the 5, and they're going to run out of time. 4, 3, 2, 1. The game's over, and the Broncos win. Crucial mistake by Hugh Millen on the scramble. The young quarterback had to stop the clock. He didn't do it. McPherson sees defeat when they had a chip shot tying field goal.
So, that was dumb. That was like really, really dumb. Game over. Patriots lose 9-6. And after the game, you can bet that all the talk was about this absolutely terrible mistake. Millen spoke to the press more than an hour after the game, and walked through the play that would define his career and would live in infamy. Head coach Nick McPherson made it incredibly clear to him after the Pats called their final timeout. Look into the end zone to try and find a receiver, and if it wasn't there, throw the ball away and stop the clock. Instead, Millen did the exact opposite. He said after the game, "All my fault. It was all my fault." Coach made the situation clear. If there was nothing there, just throw it out of bounds. It wasn't a lack of coaching communication by any means. It was just a critical error on the part of the quarterback. I'm going to be up until the sun comes up tomorrow. Which raises the question, why did he do it? Well, instead of taking a quick look, he tried to buy some time and give himself more room for a receiver to get open, thereby defying the coach's orders of just making the play quick. And when he did that, he thought he crossed the line of scrimmage. So at that point, there was no going back. He was off to the races on a play that never should have happened and never had a chance at working. Millen then added on this, obviously, a critical error. If I hadn't done it, we'd still be playing overtime right now. And I know I said at the start of the video that what Jakobi Meyers did on Sunday was probably the dumbest play that a Patriot ever made. Both of these plays involved a Patriot costing his team a chance at playing for overtime against an AFC West opponent. And I know I said that it wasn't a competition, and that every other play would be fighting for second place. But honestly, even though what Meyers did looked a million times stupider, and looks a million times funnier without any added context, he might be spared here. What Hugh Millen did might have been worse, and even though it's largely been forgotten throughout NFL history more than 30 years later, while the Jakobi Meyers play will live on forever, I think that this was worse because it had to do with intent. Meyers wasn't explicitly told by his coach to not do something. Granted, what he did was incredibly stupid, and you have to have more awareness. But he was never supposed to touch the ball on this play. The coaching staff never told the guys not to lateral it around. Granted, that was kind of implied, but once Meyers unexpectedly got the ball when he wasn't supposed to, after Stevenson tried to keep it alive with a lateral, natural instincts took over. The ball was never supposed to be in his hands. He panicked. Here, Millen was explicitly told by the coaching staff before the play to not run. He was told straight up to throw the ball away if it's not there, and to not play hero ball. The ball was always going to be in his hands, so he doesn't have that excuse at all. It's like the difference if you have a kid, and the kid goes into your office and deletes a very important file on your computer, versus you explicitly telling the kid not to go into your office and touch your computer, and yet he does it anyways. Yes, both are awful situations, both deserve to be punished, but one of them feels way worse than the other. Plus, as bad as that play by Meyers was, at least he's had a solid career with the Patriots thus far. and people will remember him as a good player that just made a boneheaded mistake. He wasn't the one that put the Pats in a position where they were struggling to put the Raiders away. On the flip side, not only did Hugh Millen guide his offense to just 6 points before this play, and he had just over 100 yards passing before this drive, meaning that he was one of the primary reasons why the Patriots were struggling, but let's be honest, unlike Jakobi Meyers, does anyone have any fond memories of Hugh Millen's time in New England? Anyone? Bueller? This was a man who went 5-15 as a starter, who went 0-7 under center for the Pats in 1992, and who finished the 1991 season with 9 touchdowns and 18 interceptions, posting an abysmal touchdown-to-interception ratio of 1-2. This was a man who might have legitimately been the worst quarterback in team history, and this isn't even including that awful play he had against the Broncos. If you include that play, he might be the undisputed number 1. Don't get me wrong, the Meyers play was awful, and was one of the dumbest things I've seen a player do. But even though it looked a million times stupider, you could make a legitimate argument that what Hugh Millen did was worse and dumber. He defied the coach's orders. He had control of the play the whole time. He was a terrible player. Nothing about what developed on the play proceeding to the dumb moment was unexpected. I think Hugh Millen's mistake might have been even worse. Because on this day in 1991, Hugh Millen made an absolutely Hugh mistake. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at Jaguar Gator 9. To see college football videos, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.